You are listening to the Icehouse Podcast, hosting conversations with gritty Kiwi business owners and leaders and industry-leading minds.
Kia ora everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Icehouse Podcast. It's Bryar here, the Community Manager. What a privilege it is to be able to have these deep and honest conversations with business owners and leaders locally throughout New Zealand. Today's guests are husband and wife duo AJ and Rachel McKean. They're the owners of Synergy Technologies. What really drew me to this business is how obvious it is that the values and leaving a legacy is at the forefront of what they do. This is highlighted even further in our conversation. We talk about how their values have stayed the same since day one, the dynamics of working alongside your life partner and business partner, what they offer at Synergy Technologies, and the community impact that they have. We also talk about how Rachel was the first to hear about the Icehouse Owner Manager program, and she went on the program first, loved it, and then AJ followed a couple years later. Having both done the Owner Manager program now, we check in to see how the program has impacted their business and lifestyle. So we like to start with this nice open question, helps give a bit of context to what your guys' lives look like. What does a day in the life of both of you look like?
Awesome. So for me as MD, it's overseeing all the operational elements of the business. It's making sure that our team are engaged, that our customers are engaged, and that the whole organization is aligned with our strategy and that we're executing it well. So kind of everything in between, covering those areas.
Yeah, awesome. What about you, Rachel?
Well, for me, it looks different than it did in the early days. I spend less time at the office, and I primarily work from home now. We realized that the dynamic was shifting for us as a family, so we adjusted some responsibilities, hired some additional admin so I could work from home, which created a balance that works better for us.
Yeah.
I'm focusing primarily on financial oversight and governance, and spend a lot of my time looking at reports.
Love it.
Yeah.
You've got to have both.
Yeah.
You do have to have both. And I know there's a question in here coming up around that dynamic of working as, in a family business. But I just want to hear a bit more about the Synergy Technologies journey. Can you walk us through that journey? How did it come to be, and what's the why behind the business?
Yeah, good question. So our journey started after the birth of our third child. So we had 3 kids, 3 and under. And I think with kids, there's an element of kind of reflection, and you start to look at what's important. You start to reprioritize, rebalance things. And we were doing a little bit of volunteer work at the time, actually working with some of the homeless community in downtown Tauranga. And we saw this increasing need. And I think the intersection of seeing need with kids coming along, we asked ourselves, what do we want our legacy to be for our kids?
I love that.
I think more so than just a financial legacy. How do we raise good humans? How do we mirror service and what we do? And for a short period, we actually entertained going into full-time charitable work. We realized very quickly that there were some amazing organizations and amazing people that had a lot more experience in doing that than we did. So we asked ourselves the question of how do we take what we do, which was technology. I think at that point, we had over 15 years in tech, and Rachel had a few years along the industry and adjacent.
Yeah.
And said, how can we create, an economic engine that is for good?
Thanks.
And along with that, we saw, some of the customers that I'd been working through my career that expressed a lot of frustrations around service, around not being heard. We knew that we wanted to create an organization with a really good, strong culture. And so we wanted to combine all of those. So that was really our start. That was our why ultimately was, how do we create an organization that exists to do good?
Yeah, that's incredible. Oh, I just love that is the foundation of how you guys set up for your business. I think that's great. What was that first step in bringing it to life? So you've been obviously mulling over quite a lot of ideas of what you can do, what legacy you want to have. You decide on a business in the field that you guys are experts in. What was that first practical step in bringing it to life?
Well, at the time we were living in the USA. We had gone back for a short stint to be close to family while the kids were little. And we were mulling this over and decided we wanted to be really clear on what we stood for and what the identity of the business was. So we arranged for the kids to go stay with their grandparents for the day. And we went to a local coffee shop and spent the time there brainstorming. We were given some good advice from a friend who said, be clear on your values from the beginning. So out of those conversations that day, we established our values that we still have today.
Wow.
And then from there, it was just backing ourselves, taking the leap of faith, saying yes to the opportunities that presented, and then figuring out how to make it happen.
Wow.
We often say we spent the first 2 years building the plane as we were flying it.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, totally. And wow, to have the same values as you had. Do you think that's because they were just your guys' life values?
Yeah, I think, I can't speak for everybody, but I think when it comes to values, particularly in an owner-managed organization, it is, or it should be very much an extension of your kind of core beliefs. And I think that was certainly it for us. We certainly had an aspirational view of what we wanted our change and positive impact to be. But they really came from the heart rather than kind of buzzwords, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so important, hey? That's cool. You talk about leaving that legacy, which I think is very powerful, and doing this through business. Why do you think business can be such a strong force for good?
Yeah, I think lots of reasons. I think first, acknowledging that business hasn't always done well for communities that they're a part of or the environment. So I think it first is acknowledging that. I think as far as business, there's the ability to influence at lots of different levels. So, there's the obvious economic engine that's there.
Yeah.
There's, social, environmental, and I think just being able to reach scale. Businesses move quickly. There's the advantage of speed. Good businesses embrace innovation. So being able to take that innovative mindset to how you can make a positive difference. And I think that there's a really good connection between and a lot of data that supports businesses that do good are also good for business. Really good book, Net Positive, by one of the CEOs of Unilever. I read about Unilever's long-term sustainability plan. And what they laid out, identified that was their for purpose or for good brands were actually far more economically sustainable. They had high degrees of profitability, and ultimately consumers were wanting to work with products and an organization that was doing good.
Totally.
So I think there's, again, a really good opportunity for business, and there's also really good outcomes for business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so well articulated. Is that something that you've just discovered more and more as you got on the journey?
It is. I think it's probably a few elements. There's the ability to, certainly influence a team and customers, but ultimately find that there's kind of an attraction piece as well. So with having purpose in what we're doing, we're finding staff that are naturally attracted to that as well. And I think, we've got an amazing team that are also led by wanting to make a positive impact. And we've got a great group of customers that also find alignment. So it's both the fact that we get to influence, but we also get to surround ourselves with really good people that have similar mindsets, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And like in conversations around this, I've heard lots about how that force for good actually can start internally, like with your people. You said around setting your values, and how important that is to create like a nice force for good feeling within an internal business. So yeah, I completely agree with that. That's cool. People were probably going at this point, what do you guys offer? What is it that you do? What does Synergy Technologies offer, and how does that link with the impact within the community as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are an IT consultancy business.
Yeah.
So we work with companies and organizations up and down the country and in fact beyond, overseas as well. Couple of core areas. So we work with SMEs who maybe don't have any internal IT team to really wrap around and provide service and support to all of their users, all the way through to helping them build out technology strategies and budget and plan.
Wow.
They really use technology as an enabler, which is really exciting. And then we work with larger organizations, larger enterprises that have perhaps robust internal teams supporting them, IT teams, and we augment what they do. We wrap around with support, just ensuring there's no kind of gaps in coverage, and then provide a lot of insight and innovation into how they do things. And then through that, the community impact, we have 10% of all operating profit that goes back out to the community.
Great.
Since we've started, I think we're now over $580,000 that's gone out.
Nice.
So we're super proud of.
Yes.
And the other really neat thing has been able to work alongside our customers and, joint initiatives, joint funding, community street cleanups together. It's a really good way to be able to align with our customer base as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Right through to, technology donations and laptops and things that go out as well. So generally we try and just weave that into the fabric of what we do. And ideally, if we can bring a customer or two along on the journey with us, that's really exciting. I think that's something we identified really early on. Initially, it was just the two of us consulting.
Yeah.
And we started to realize that there was an opportunity for multiplication. And the easy thing was just to continue to run a business as the two of us.
Yeah.
But we realized that, we could only grow the business to a certain point. There were some phenomenal organizations around that had a lot bigger opportunity for impact than even we did. So what would it look like to inspire them to really see something snowball?
Wow.
That was really the big driver for growth for us as a business.
Wow, that's amazing. What I love, I've actually done some study through NYU actually, like in terms of social impact and ESG and things like that. So I'm really passionate about it. But what I love about what you're saying is that you guys have aligned the impact with what you do from an operational perspective. What you're doing for the community directly aligns with your expertise and your business and what the core purpose is, which I think is a stellar example of that, and helps amplify it and make it a bit more effective to run. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's the opportunity for every business and every individual is, it might not be that you want to put 10% of your operating profit aside, but what skills, what service, what product do you have, and how can you give of that in some small way?
Yeah.
Because often, little things can have big ripples. So that's my encouragement to everybody is find something.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely spot on. Oh, so cool. Do you have a standout story of impact that you've had within the community?
Well, we had the privilege of working with some really amazing community organizations. So we've been able to participate with a few different initiatives. One of them was a commercial kitchen through Good Neighbor.
Cool, yeah.
And they do food rescue, and they're just really connected into the community and really understand what's going on. They were starting a program for high school students from, I think, Tonga Boys High School to come in and learn some soft skills and some basic kitchen skills to give them a pathway into the culinary program at Toi Homai.
Cool.
So we helped them fund their commercial kitchen. And then they also opened a care junction. And we were able to make a donation to fund their rent for that building for a year so that they could build this community hub where people can come in and get connected and get support for whatever they might need.
Yeah, wow.
And then we've also supported the Tauranga Food Bank, and I've made some donations to them over the years, and they've been able to use that to supply fresh meat for the year so that as they're giving out their donations and things to the community, they can actually give some fresh meat and things like that.
Wow.
I think one thing that really drove that home for us just in the last couple of months, so we attended Good Neighbor, had their 10-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. And as much as we stay as plugged in as we can, oftentimes you can kind of lose sight of the impact.
Yes.
And Good Neighbor is great around providing updates so we can see what that impact looks like. But showing up to the event, they had stories from individuals that had been directly impacted, those that had been dealing with addiction and all kinds of challenges, being able to see that connect with the individual, I think really helped us reconnect with our why and remind us of, what started this to begin with was that individual impact, and that human connection, I think was probably one of the most impactful things for me in quite a while.
Yeah, it was really beautiful to see how their stories were told and just the journey that they've been on. It was really neat to see.
Wow, that's so cool to hear. It's powerful, hearing stories from the community. That's great. Thank you guys for sharing that. I really appreciate it. We have many family, husband, wife, life partner, work partner teams within the Icehouse community.
Yep.
Any tips for those doing business with their life partner? How has that looked for you guys?
It is always a learning experience.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things is to keep an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing really is communication and creating a space for safe and honest communication.
Cool.
In the early days, the business was all-consuming, and with a young family, that meant juggling things and doing things at odd hours of the days just because they had to get done. But that left us talking about the business all the time, and we didn't want to lose sight of who we were as a couple and a family.
Yeah.
So we started establishing boundaries like no work talk on Sundays,
Yeah, great.
no checking emails after 8 p.m., giving each other permission to question if the work we were doing had to be done right then or if it could wait until the morning, but making that a safe space.
Yeah.
That was really helpful. Another thing was focusing on our strengths rather than weaknesses and allowing ourselves to do the work that played to our strengths. And like many couples, we found our strengths were opposites, but that worked well, and they ended up being kind of complementary. But we also learned along the way that rather than trying to do it all, we should seek help with the areas where we had gaps or areas that weren't our strong suits.
That is so good.
And I think that was really pivotal. Another thing, I think the most important thing in all of it was reminding ourselves that we were a couple first before we were business partners, and that needed to remain a priority. And that's become a guiding principle for us as we've encountered different challenges over the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that you mentioned the challenges. I think that's a really key piece where you can use those challenges to drive you apart, or you could really lean in. And I think thankfully for us, like any couple, we've had our ups and downs over the years, but ultimately we find when there are challenging areas, that's where we actually draw together the closest.
But that's intentional.
It is absolutely, and I think it has to be. And like you said, reminding ourselves constantly of the strengths. My tendency is I like to move fast and break stuff. Rachel has the tendency to move really slowly and cross the T's and nod the I's. But you need both of those in business.
Yeah.
I think once we realize that our ways of doing things, while vastly different or could be really complementary, provide good balance, that shifted the narrative quite a bit.
Wow. Yeah, that's so good. Oh, I just want to send that snippet to so many people because...
Well, hopefully it's helpful to someone.
Yeah, absolutely, because you're right, though, creating that safe space within a lot of that is really important, right? To go, hey, I'm hitting you up about doing this work, but we've pre-discussed that we're allowed to hit each other up about this.
Yes.
It's 9 o'clock at night, or, hey, actually our marriage comes first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly...
And you do find tension at times where your business owner hat and your life partner hat actually have two different positions in the situation. And that's where that safe and honest communication is so important, because you can say, look, this is where I'm at right now, and I'm seeing this on both sides. How do we navigate this? And, sometimes it might be, I need to pull back from this business aspect, and we bring in a third party to advise on a situation so that we can kind of remove that conflict when possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a
that
really
tension.
Key piece is that, we've had a board advisor pretty much since the beginning.
Cool.
And, sometimes I would say tiebreaker, because that's not a good point of actually kind of reiterating what each of our points are.
Yeah.
And he's been really good to go, actually, I see what you're saying here. I see what this looks like. And, that helps us to have unity in the discussions. So sometimes having external parties quite helpful.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for business in general to take as much outside kind of at least input as you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you guys for sharing that. It's awesome. Technology is constantly evolving. It's a huge industry, and of recent years has been at the pulse of what we all do as human beings.
Yep.
How do you guys stay ahead of the curve and then make sure that your team is equipped with the latest knowledge as well?
Absolutely. And you're right, it is, and it's moving at a breakneck pace. I mean, we're seeing, AI just infiltrating all elements of technology at the moment. And that's a massively powerful opportunity. But it also means that you've got to move pretty quickly on a learning pace. Rachel talked about our core values that we created at the very beginning. Always learning was one of those core values.
Cool.
That's something that I've always put a big priority on through my career. Particularly in technology, it's a limitless field of learning. Mm-hmm. So we have to always approach it with curiosity. Curiosity drives innovation. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I would say for our team is, we always stay curious. Yeah. You're, never settled with exactly as it is today. You're aware, eyes open with what's ahead, and a mentoring culture. That's been a really big thing for us. Again, since the onset, we said, this is what we want the organization to look like. Mentoring was a really big piece. And so, whether that's within our team or with our customers, there's always someone that's looking to teach somebody. And what's been good with that is, most of our team are exceptionally experienced. The majority are 15 plus years in the industry. We've got a few, like myself, that are 25 plus years now.
Yeah, wow.
And with that, we see this bidirectional learning happening where the more junior that come into the organization will challenge how things are done. They'll question how things are done. Yeah. And there's a receptiveness on the more senior side. It's always have kind of a glass, an empty cup. How do I take on new information? And at the same time, less of kind of a rock star, I know it all approach with the more seniors and actually going, how can I impart this knowledge to the rest of the team and our customers? Yeah. And that's been really key. Then obviously within the team, setting goals and roadmaps around continual development, certifications, continual learning. And that's become quite a key part of our culture.
Yeah.
And but as I said, at its core, I think curiosity is a big piece.
Yeah, huge. Yeah. And when you do those certifications and trainings and workshops and mentorship, it builds confidence in your team,
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. You feel very prepared to go in and have an informed discussion.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I love that. Focus on culture has been something like we've talked about, something from the beginning that was very important to you guys, culture, people, values, not just something on your wall, but is lived out. How have you lived that out? How have you implemented it within your business?
Yeah, I think you're right. Your team will see through empty values. Yes. The amount of people I've talked to that roll their eyes and they go, we had a morning t-shirt because we put some new values up.
Yeah.
And it falls really flat. So I think, like I said, having values that start from, within the kind of shareholder stakeholder view is quite key. Obviously needs to be reflective of where the organization's at. But I think it is something that needs to be continually integrated within the organization. So for us, it's something we continually talk about. We have a pulse tool with the team that we run every couple of weeks. How are you feeling 1 through 5? So we can kind of keep an eye on where things are at.
Cool.
Every couple of weeks we roll in and a value. As a business, how are we living out this specific value? So it's, people first, or always learning, always listening. And there's a pulse 1 through 10. And that's a really good gauge. So if our team can see that we're actually living it out, that's the first place to start.
Okay.
We reference it through our one-on-ones, our review process, even through our interview process. We gauge the candidate that we're working with along the lines of value alignment, regular Q12 surveys. And then I think at an individual management or governance level, we're constantly bringing that into those values into the conversation. And that becomes a real guiding line for us as an organization. So heavily integrated all throughout the business. And I think that's been a really good space for us to continue ensuring that we're living it out. It creates accountability for us as a business because at any point in time, the team can go, wait a minute, what you're doing there doesn't align with our values.
Yes.
And there are times you have to make some tough decisions as a business to keep alignment with those values. And we've had to do that. We've had to look at things and go, actually, is that keeping in line with this specific value? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it has a financial impact. But ultimately, we keep coming back to that because that's the principles that we live by. Yeah. And it creates integrity within the organization when we do.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I think values can be one of those things that, they can sometimes be put up in bright lights and then you don't hear about them again because things get busy and all that. Yet if you are consistent with it, it can be such a great long-term investment into your business. Like you say, it helps with giving feedback as a team. Hey, that wasn't quite aligned with our values. It helps with strategic decision making.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think sometimes that is missed within businesses because within an SME, there's so much going on, so much that you're carrying. But if you see it in that long-term light, I just think that's cool to see that you guys have done that.
And I've heard some people say that values don't even actually have to be on the wall because if that's the only place they sit, they don't matter.
Yeah.
So it's actually more important that they're intrinsically built into how the business operates and how they view without even having anything on the wall.
Mm. Do you guys, I'm throwing in a question here, but do you guys think back to that cafe meeting you had right at the beginning and go like, wow, look at where we've come from that? Like,
I think we've done that quite a few times. I've been like, could you have even imagined this is where we would be after that? And then some days we were like, oh, we should actually take the minute to reflect back and see where we started and where we've gotten to.
And I think that's a camp I tend to spend the most amount of time. So very futuristic is, look at things like Clifton Strength. Futuristic is my number one. So that's where I spend all my time and energy. Not generally looking over my, looking backwards.
That's where I sit.
And which is, where Rachel sits. And I think it's a really good practice to do that. I think one for us, taking those moments to reconnect with our why is a big piece. And I think often I find you can be your harshest critic and can look at every little piece and want to pull it apart. At least I do. And so I think to be able to look back and go, actually, we've come a really long way. Take a moment. And I think take a moment to remind your team as well is another key piece. So no, probably not as much as I should, but it's a really good practice.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, I hear guests that come on the podcast afterwards say, oh, thanks for kind of giving me like 30, 40 minutes to like reflect, to sit there and reflect. And I'm like, true, like when else do you do that, right? It's a huge practice to actually sit down and go, this is where we've come from. So absolutely. Very cool. I want to change gears a bit and talk a little bit about your guys' Icehouse experience, if that's cool. How did you hear about the Icehouse?
Well, as our business was growing, we were looking for ways to learn and educate ourselves further on running a business.
Great.
I don't think had ever envisioned that in the early days of life that we would actually own a business. A friend who eventually became our board advisor told us about Icehouse. He had colleagues who had attended courses before and said that they were really positive experiences. So we just looked into it and thought it might be a great way for us to learn more.
Awesome. And I'm right in thinking that you were the first Rachel to go on the Owner Manage program.
I was. I actually started with the Know Your Numbers course first.
Yeah. Awesome. So you started with the workshop.
Yep.
And then you jumped on the Owner Manager program.
Yep.
Were there any hesitations for you?
For sure. There absolutely were. I wasn't sure if I was up for the challenge because it seemed like a really big bite. But like I said, I had done the Know Your Numbers course, and that was an amazing experience. So I was really hopeful that the Owner Manager program would be even better and help build some confidence in myself. So I just decided to go for it. After kind of looking at what the course was offering, I really felt it was the way to go.
Yeah. And how did you find it?
I was so nervous for the first block because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And honestly, imposter syndrome was there a little bit. But after the first block course, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. Yeah.
And I think after, journey alongside Rach going through that, the enthusiasm around it was infectious. And so all the way through, she's like, you have to do this. You have to do this. So
cool.
It was kind of tough not to after that.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. It's been said a bit on the podcast that first block feels like the first day of school,
It totally does.
You're just rocking up. We're like, hi, you're the new kid. Yeah, totally. I'm the new kid. And totally heard that before. But cool as well because, life partners, business partners to go, hey, AJ, it'd be awesome to have you come on as well so that we're speaking the same language.
For sure.
Is that what you found, like once you both did it?
Absolutely. And desperately, I think as we got to, was it block 3 and 5 with the
business plan.
I was like, can I have a peek at your notes? Because it's and yeah, she was like involved, and like, no, you've got to go through it all yourself.
You're like, no, I
would have had some kind of inside track, but no, she was, let me go through it.
I think what was also quite cool was I did mine in 2021 and he did his in 2023. So we had a 2-year gap.
Yeah.
And it was actually really quite cool because our business had progressed and transformed from when I did it to when he did it. So it was actually quite neat to see the different takeaways and the relevance of it. Even though our business had changed, the relevance was still there. And it was just really, really cool. I would encourage any couple that runs a business together that both people do the owner-manager program, because it really does help align your vision, your focus, and what you want out of your business and how you want to run your business.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I love that. Has there been anything like a takeaway that comes to mind that you guys have implemented into business or lifestyle?
Yeah, so many takeaways.
Yeah.
I think the notion of you, the business, and you are the business was a really big one. And we talked on the early days, you're kind of all in and it's all encompassing. And I think being able to create that delineation was really good. The dedicated time away, that was probably one of the more daunting things, but ultimately provided the space that was really helpful to sit back and look at the big picture, look at where we're going. And I think that was probably something that just wasn't naturally occurring. You just nose to the grindstone, just keep on going. Ultimately for me, though, it was the people that were met through the course. I mean, fantastic material, and really good stuff, great opportunity to kind of deep dive into a lot of different areas. But having a great group of other business owners, you talked about the man in the arena. I think business ownership can be quite a lonely place, and to be able to be surrounded with 20-odd people that are journeying, along the same path, was a fantastic space to be, and the kind of fireside chats. Where I think, to be fair, it's just as valuable as sitting through the content. That was a phenomenon.
Yes, I would probably mirror a similar answer. The workshops were all fantastic. It was always something useful. The discussions around values, culture, and make sure you take time to consider your role in the business was massively helpful. For me, there was a lot of validation that we were doing a better job than we thought we were. So that was really encouraging. And it was just fantastic to be in a room with other business owners, even though we were all different industries, but still facing many of the same challenges. But that was really great because it offered different perspectives on the challenges. So the community aspect was the greatest thing. We still keep in touch with our cohort and catch up. We're trying to catch up with my cohort in the next few months. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I just love the community element of it. And you've got sort of friends for life, right?
Absolutely.
And especially during the times that you guys did your programs,
Yes.
through the pandemic and through fun things.
We had a couple of hours affected by lockdowns and things like that. So that was
right.
a really interesting period, but it was having that network to just chat with was really cool.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear. I've heard a lot of alumni say, I don't know if I would have got through the pandemic if it wasn't for the cohort being able to jump on the phone. And
that's like
for sure.
We say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with somebody else.
Yeah.
I think being able to have a group of others that you can do that journey with definitely creates a lot more resilience.
Yeah, brilliant. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. I could honestly talk to you guys for ages. This is so, I don't know, it's uplifting for me. I'd love to hear, what is one personal, professional goal that you guys would be open to sharing about, that you're leaning into for the future?
Yeah. So a couple of probably blended personal, professional goals. One of the things which I know Sven during the course hammered on a lot around health. And I think the notion that a healthy business starts with a healthy leader. So renewed focus on that for me, sleeping well, eating well, exercising, sometimes can kind of, I keep forgetting and need to keep reminding myself of that. So some good goals around that.
Cool.
And the learning piece, I think while I'm not on the tools, as it were, and haven't been for a few years, still, again, there's extension of values from us. The always learning piece is a really big value for me. So I've kind of set some significant goals over the next year around certifications and continuing development. And
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, for me, personally, I have been working on rebuilding better habits to support my well-being. You know, the sleep has been a huge thing for me. I'm making sure I'm more consistent in my routine and getting adequate sleep, and it's actually quite a game changer when you actually put focus into that.
Cool.
But as part of it, I wanted to add a hobby into the mix. So last summer, I started learn to sail lessons at our local yacht club.
Yeah.
And so my goal is to crew a boat that goes out into the open ocean at some stage. I've done harbor cruising, but I'm really keen to get out into the ocean.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. Professionally, probably in line with the always learning piece of our business, I've been considering going back to school and pursuing some formal education, probably looking at accounting or finance.
Wow, that's so inspiring. And just throughout the whole conversation, it's just so obvious that you guys have worked out where your strengths lie, what you're passionate about, and of course, life's a journey that, you know, changes as your family grows and things like that. But you're leaning into that and you're being honest with it. And I think that's really benefiting what you're doing as a business, as a family, as a team. And so I just want to say, like, go you guys. It's really,
thank you.
Sounds so healthy. It sounds like really impactful. But guys, I've absolutely loved having you on the Icehouse podcast. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing the story. We love having you both of you part of the alumni community. And so, yeah, all the best for the future.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.